Kojo, 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 Kojo.
Pranam, Namaskar, and hello everyone. Glad to have, well, two, but then I would also like to call myself young. The age is on my side. Uh, on this conversation on Arth Cultural Quest, we'll be speaking about why young voices matter. We bring in context, we bring in perspectives, and we talk about what young India or what it means to be a young voter, a young politician in India. I'm glad to have been joined by Adhyaksh ji of the Bharatiya Janata Yuva Morcha, which is the youth wing of the largest political party in the world, the BJP. I also have on stage with me Sudhanshu ji. Sudhanshu runs Young India Foundation, which goes about organizing voter registration events, among other things. I'd like to start off with you, Sudhanshu. Why don't you tell us what it means to be, or why young voices matter? You go around, organizing events. You've done that in university fairs. You've done that in concerts, and you've been continuously traveling India, organizing these voter registration events. What do you think? What is your perspective on young Indians and what young Indians want?
Do young voices matter? I'm gonna take a risk and say, no, they don't. Young youth voices in India right now do not matter. They used to, pre-independence. We had an elaborate set of leaders, all young, below the age of 25, that were constantly participating in nation building. They were constantly seeking independence. They were helping each other out. Now you name it, right? People don't know this, but B.R. Ambedkar ji was able to actually become an MLC at the age of 25 from Bombay Legislative Council. You have people, whether it's Rani Lakshmibai, who led an entire rebellion before the age of 25. And then you have people that we look up forward to. Swami Vivekananda ji, who, a little bit above 25 and 30. You had, obviously, Bhagat Singh ji and the entire Freedom Revolutionary Party's fighters who participated in that nation building, made sure that their voices matter. But gradually so, since independence, since the Constituent Assembly in 1951 brought the age restrictions, the age criteria of when you can contest as an MLA or MP at the age of 25 and 30, the result has been that you have the largest youth voter bank, the electorate, voting for the oldest elected representatives. Now, PRS states, and this is shocking, so 670 million people, right? According to the census and UN data, 670 million people, 67 crore people are below the age of 25. Our average age of a parliamentarian in 2023, according to PRS, is 58 in the Lok Sabha and 64 in the Rajya Sabha. Now, we did some extra numbers. We compiled about 10 extra states and assemblies. The average age of an elected official at an MLA or MP level rounds about at 61 or 62. Imagine 670 million people are then represented by people twice or three times their age in most assemblies and parliament. And now you're going to say, that doesn't really matter. Representation, people are working for them. But here's some other facts. The Youth Commonwealth Report states that India actually figures in 130 out of 160 in their Youth Development Index. This was 2013 when they first released it. They haven't released another index after that. We've ranked number 1 in the highest youth suicides in the world. We hover between 30% to 40% of youth unemployment. We have one of the highest youth malnutrition rates. All this, because I believe, is a lack of representation, right? It's taken 17 Lok Sabhas to get to where we are. 17 Lok Sabhas, 17 different elections, where we currently have a gerontocracy. And if people who don't know what a gerontocracy, it's a really complicated way of saying young people elect a government that's run by old people. right? A government of old people. And so, you're going to ask me, okay, and I say this a lot, right? And I get asked, things are changing. They are. So, for example, pre and post 2014, right? And this is my experience working in youth development. If you go out, right? If you go into these, let's say the ministries, let's say into the assemblies, you have a lot more young people visibly there, between the ages of 21 and 25. Not even, oh, young keke, you're 40 years old. No, actually between 20 to 25 in the private staff of ministries, in the actual bureaucratic staffs of ministries, coming in and trying to participate. But that isn't enough, right? There needs to be more.
Okay, fair enough. But it's interesting that you make a mention of this, because 9 years ago, a young man who's sitting right here delivered a TED talk speaking about young Indians in politics and the challenges, speaking about Dynasty. 5 years later, he was viral all across India with another wonderful speech which spoke about tectonic change in Indian politics and democracy. Today, he sits here as a member of parliament from Bangalore South. He is also the president of the BJYM. Tejasvi, I want to know from you, what has changed in the last 9 years? Has your perspective changed? What do you say? How do you read the situation and the transformation that has come about?
Thank you, Arjun, and thank you, Vikramji and the organizers for having me here, and best wishes for Arth. I think the last 8-9 years, especially after 2014, has seen two very important areas of India's social life being very positively transformed. India's polity as well as India's economic sphere. Both has undergone a very perceptible and a very real democratization. I say this because post 2014, because I work with the BJYM, I work at the grassroots, and I work the hurly-burly of politics every single day, I see a large number of young people participating with political activism, political parties, from panchayat to parliament levels, whether it is assisting parliamentarians, whether it is assisting ministries, whether it is working in their back offices, or for that matter, even taking an active interest in electoral politics as candidates and as participants themselves. I see a great deepening and democratization of the political space. The TED talk that you mentioned of mine 9 or 10 years ago had flagged three important issues or challenges, or rather I would say disincentives which discouraged young people from making the leap into electoral politics. The immense amount of money that is needed to win an election in India, the unfair advantage that or role that caste plays in Indian political parties, the muscle power or the organizational outreach that is needed to make a dent or an impact in politics. All of these three, in great ways, have been diluted in the last 8 years, 9 years, thanks to the Prime Minister's vision of establishing a political culture that places talent over dynasty, performance over pedigree, and the party especially has launched a systematic war against dynasty politics, parivarvad politics all over the country, and as a result, the inter-party democracy in the Bharatiya Janata Party, especially because I can speak for my own party today, is at the highest levels in any political party ever. While this is something that is, very encouraging, because in my travels all across the country, whether it is in the Northeast, just as we speak, Arjun, my Yuva Morcha state president of Meghalaya, Kristen, is contesting the MLA election in Meghalaya, and he is all of 26, 27 years old. And as we speak, in Nagaland, there are 2 or 3 constituencies in which the BJYM activists are contesting, and all of them are below the age of 30 years. In the recently concluded Tripura elections, in 6 important seats, young activists between the age of 27, 30, 32, 33, they got opportunities to contest. So the point I'm trying to make is 9 years ago, when I made the TED talk, I thought it is next to impossible for a youngster, someone like me coming from a middle class family, who doesn't have the money, muscle, or the caste influence needed to make big in electoral politics, to even get considered for an electoral seat. That was the context in which I had made that speech. But today, here I am, having been elected to the parliament, thanks to the party's support, the party which made sure that even a youngster with only 13, 14 lakh rupees in my bank account could contest a Lok Sabha election and win. And I'm not just an exception. You go all across the country today, whether it's in cities like Mumbai, or whether it is in the northeast of India, the examples that I mentioned now, you find young people coming from all castes, coming from different socio-economic backgrounds, finding space, finding voice in the mainstream political party setup in India's largest political party. I think this is a massive change which indicates a deepening of India's democratic roots. While this is something that has happened at the political space, the same kind of democratization has also taken place on the economic space. Today, I come from the city of Bengaluru, which is home to almost 50% of India's startups and almost 40% of India's unicorns. You speak to any young co-founder, founder, or a newly minted millionaire, billionaire in India, most of them come from subaltern communities. Most of them come from tier 2, tier 3 backgrounds, rustic Hindi-speaking, Kannada, Tamil-speaking backgrounds, who have now established the unicorns that India is so proud of. So, the last 9 years, India has witnessed not only first generation political startups, political leaders, but India has also witnessed a great amount of first generation economic startups. India has seen a first generation of millionaires and billionaires, which shows that both in the democratic sphere as well as both in the economic sphere as well as the political sphere, there has been a great democratization that has taken place over the last 8-9 years. If I can just take 30 seconds more, Arjun. I also think that one of the big reasons that this has been made possible is because a lot of institutional and systemic roadblocks or hindrances which otherwise would have disincentivized, discouraged young people from taking this risk, making these leaps, starting a company for that matter, raising funds for that matter, or for more importantly, looking at the political space from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. Every political party was like the private Jagir of a political party. This war on nepotism, the war on dynasty politics that the Prime Minister has led, has given hope to a lot of young people to come to mainstream politics. The war that has been led against crony capitalism and making sure that India's economic space is more meritocracy-oriented and allows for fair and free competition, has encouraged and given strength to a lot of young people from modest backgrounds to dream big even on the economic sphere. So I think we need not paint a very gloomy picture of what it is out there. I think India is at a very positive, very optimistic point in time in its history.
Absolutely, fair enough. And it brings an important point in this conversation, which I'll take it up again. But before that, Sudhanshu, like I've spoken about, the voter registration events, they're mostly, and I gather it from the social media and outreach of your organization, many of those events are being organized in tier 1 cities. What do you think is what is the pulse of this new India that you're talking about?
So before that, Tejasvi ji made a really good point about, I don't mean to be gloomy about young India right now in the 21st century. I'm actually very optimistic. I'm bullish on India, and especially India's youth, right? But that doesn't mean that I stray away from being practical, that yes, we have the unicorn founders. But my question is that ability to access the economic power and the political power? Has it devolved? Now, we will have people like Tejasvi who have been highlighted, who have gotten that, and many more. As you said, I was just in Meghalaya. You have a very young crowd. I mean, the average age in Meghalaya is 21 years old. So yeah, you will have leaders there. But I think what I'm more concerned about is how far and the ability for us to make these things accessible. So the reason that I'm saying that is there are still systemic roadblocks that come in the way. Now, you talked about nepotism, you talked about money power. Those are there. They have been, they were prominent before 2014, they might still exist today. But what other roadblocks that come in the way, and what we've realized in our work, are the voting barriers. Now, you just talked about Bengaluru. You talked about the access to economic capital. But how many of those people that are working in the startups are able to vote? Now, it might be easy for people in the audience or critics to say, oh, because they're not interested. I call bullshit on that. They are interested. They are passionate. They are invested in India and building something. But the issue is how do they vote? ECI, the CEOs, are so redundant in terms of getting access to when they can change their electoral roll. You have certain dates, certain timelines, and there are reforms coming slowly, but are they adapting to the pace at which India's youth is adapting? And so my question and my concern is we have to fix on those systemic roadblocks, whether it's the voter registrations or plus also in terms of contesting. I work also with young people helping them contest at a local level. Sarpanch, Punch, only between the ages of 21 and 25. And the biggest roadblocks don't come from the family as people might think. They don't come from the money power, right? The biggest roadblocks come from, oh, how do I even fill a nomination paperwork out? How does it, and will it get accepted by the bureaucracy? Will I be able to actually contest? So that access of information, that access of opportunity is still missing, and that's what we need to work on. I can answer your second part, but...
where there's a will, there's a way, definitely. But then, taking you back to the question, what do you think is the pulse of New India?
Okay. Look, I think we're very optimistic. Now, there is frustration, right? I was just in Meghalaya. Everyone in Meghalaya, right? All they talked about was economic opportunity, economic opportunity, economic opportunity. People are studying by the droves in Shillong, and they're coming out unemployed. So yes, there is frustration, but like you said, there is potential, right? There's the fact that people are eager to build in India, people are eager to invest in India, not just from, afar away abroad, but we have to also look at the practicalities. 200,000 students, capable students every single year leave India and go to the United States. 150,000 students every single year leave India and go to Canada. 100,000 leave India and go to the United Kingdom. What's happening there? Why aren't we using them? Why aren't we getting them back? So there is a sense of frustration. Now, that is being resolved. So in 2013, at the same time that Tejasvi, you had a talk, a leader from Ahmedabad also dropped into Delhi in February of 2013, and he spoke at Sri Raj College of Commerce. And that man was Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And he exclusively started the 2014 general election campaign from SRCC to talk to young people, right? To talk to the media, and he said one thing. Someone asked him, what do these ambassadors think of India? And he said that, people ask me that, oh, what's your outlook on India? And every other country, and he says, every other country you look at, Europe, America, wo buddhe ho chuke hain. But India's potential is the youth. And he actually went on to say, basically, that we need to bring more young people into politics, and which, as you said, he's done, but he went a step further. And he even talked about the age and limitations and why are there not MLAs contesting below even a certain age. You talked about people contesting between the ages of 27 to 33, but I'm thinking even more. When we can have 18, 19-year-olds, and I know this might be ridiculous for you all to hear, at the UK House of Parliament, in the Senate and House of Republicans at the age of 21, why can't we have that in India? There are aging demographics, but here, 670 million people below the age of 25.
Fair enough. Tejasvi, how would you like to rebut?
Well, there's nothing to rebut in the sense of, because there's not... the one point that Sudhanshu has been making even in his first intervention is about lowering the age of voting and lowering the age of contesting elections, and that is something that can be debated. But insofar as the points of, economic opportunities that are needed for the country's young people, and that's being a point of debate all around the country, and the unemployment as an issue. I think one must see this from the perspective of how the country has grown economically the last 9 years. The incredible amount of economic opportunities that is today available before the young people all across the country in every state. The country's economy has grown in the last 9 years. The per capita income has nearly doubled in the last 9 years. Even the formal registration of jobs in the EPFO database indicates a 3 to 4 times increase in the number of registrations in the EPFO website. The amount of money the country has spent in creating physical infrastructure, capital infrastructure expenditure in the last 9 years is the highest in almost 7 decades, which has, of course, translated in creating an incredible amount of universities at the pace of creating almost one university per week. More number of medical education seats made available in the last 9 years than was what made available in the last 70 years. A new national education policy being introduced. The number of airports almost being doubled in the last 7 years. All of this indicates at more opportunities, economic, political, social, otherwise, to the young people of India. All of this is happening at an incredible pace. There can always be a demand that the pace of economic progress must increase in India because we have such a large number of young population to cater to. And the government of the day is cognizant of this fact, is why people all across the country see hope in the Prime Minister's vision and blueprint for creating this kind of a fast economic roadmap for India. So I think the point on increasing economic opportunities for young people is something that the government of the day is very cognizant of. And there is no government before this government that has lifted more number of people below the poverty line than this government has ever done. And one thing that I would want to say at this point is, because howsoever we may deny the fact that economics will not play a role in empowering young people to make choices towards politics or not, or taking a career in politics or economics for that matter, if the basic aspiration or a fight of a young person every day is to make his ends meet, it's impossible for him to explore other human potential avenues of any aspiration or any endeavor. So the biggest roadblock, the biggest barrier that prevents any youngster from taking any risk, whether it's to take up a career in politics, in bureaucracy, or for that matter in to start a new venture on an economic front, it's the ability to be financially sound and financially stronger. And I think that is what the government of the day, the last 9 years, has tried to bring the basics, create the basic social security, so that the young people can now aspire to do other things and just not be worried and bogged down by the survival on a day-to-day basis. So seen in this context, I think there is huge optimism, huge positivity that I see everywhere. And in my travels all across the country, I see more and more young people who are penchant to make this leap towards leadership, take on these roles. And I see this coming from different communities all across the country.
Absolutely, that is what I want you to focus upon, because you make a mention of what is the young India wanting in the cities, and there's a young India in the villages or tier 2, tier 3 towns. There must be some contrast. There are caste community barriers, there are religious barriers, and there are also economic barriers. So how do you see that? Because seeing it from the organizational or Sangathan perspective, you have a vast experience in terms of you go on Pravas, you've been utilizing social media, leveraging it to the fullest, and you and the party essentially gets the largest sense of what the young India wants. How do you picture that in the backdrop of, you've spoken about economics, in the backdrop of technology, in the backdrop of voices which were so far unheard of? How do you contrast that, and how do you take it forward from there?
It's a very interesting question that you have posed, Arjun. I would want to put this in this manner, because Sudhanshu made this point of how things have kind of positively changed over the last 8-9 years, and he sees large number of young people participating in government spaces. The Nehruvian consensus, if I can use that word, was mostly the upper class, upper caste consensus, which made access to resources both politically as well as economically the domain of only a select few. The last 8 years, I keep going back to the point that I made in the very first intervention. The last 8-9 years has seen a deepening of democratization, both at the political, social, as well as the economic space. Recently, I was in a small school in a very remote part of Karnataka, and a very young, bright girl with lots of hope in her eyes spoke of how she sees Draupadi Murmu as her role model. So whether it is the story of a prime minister selling chai on a railway station, making it big and becoming the prime minister, it has inspired a generation. In the same way, examples of and representation, very conscious representation in important public offices of people like Draupadi Murmu is inspiring an entire generation. And if you were to understand what is the BJP's success in, say, Uttar Pradesh, in Madhya Pradesh, in any of these states that the Bharatiya Janata Party is repeatedly winning elections, in Gujarat for that matter, it is because every small community, every single section of the society, howsoever small numerically, has found political expression and representation in electoral politics, which is a very big thing because these communities earlier could not have even dreamed of having a substantial part of the political pie. But today that has been made possible. In the same way, if you list the founders and co-founders of the top 20 unicorns in India, find out which are the schools, colleges they studied in, the languages that they're comfortable in speaking, where they come from. An overwhelming majority of all of them are from what you refer to as tier 1 and tier 2 cities. Not many of them are from the IITs or the IIMs. Many of them come from Madan Lal, Gangaram, whatever, these type of schools, colleges which are not considered to be the Ivy League of India. But these are also the people creating wealth. So in that sense, I would say that the democratization that has taken place in the last 9 years is something that has broken the Nehruvian consensus, which made access to opportunities and privilege, confined it to the upper class, upper caste, English speaking, tier 2, the metropolitan elite of the nation.
Now, if I can
Last
just
word
come in.
there because we're running out of time and then we have to take quick.
Absolutely. So Tejasvi made a really good point. You brought about the importance of symbolism. Very, very true, whether it's the prime minister himself, the president, but symbolism also comes down to young people, right? Of course, you and I, we are privileged to be here, but symbolism in terms of can a 21-year-old also be able to contest? Can a 21-year-old have the same access if they're, credible and worthy and have merit to be able to get there? And as you said, Tejasvi, I think it's really interesting. You're advocating for, and which I agree with, that this access to economic capital has devolved and has made it. And like you said, one has to think about apne khud ke roti kapdi makan, right? Everyone has to be based economically well to think about politics. But if you're saying that, then can we then move forward? Can we take the needle forward where BJYM ensures that at least in the next general election, right, in the manifesto, we are going to commit to decreasing the age of candidacy. We're going to commit to make sure that more people between the brackets of 25 and 30 can come out and contest a certain number, a certain quota, whatever it is. If you're saying that, okay, now they're good or getting better, we can now think about building this nation. We can all participate. And I would love for there to be some progressive move on that.
Sudhanshu, I think for the third time you have made the point on decreasing the age for contesting elections. And I say that this is something that we can always debate. But what I am focused on, what BJYM is focused on, what the party is focused on, the Prime Minister's vision, is to actually give young people an opportunity to contest elections. You spoke of how filling up the nomination form itself is a challenge, right? But let me tell you that this is not a challenge for a BJYM or a BJP Karyakarta who gets a party ticket, because the party has has set up an institution where there are lawyers, where there are people who are aware of the system, how it works. They come, they help us fill up forms, they help us open bank accounts, the party takes care of things.
But for that, you have to get a ticket.
There are hundreds of people, all over the country who have made use of this opportunity. Every year, the BJYM and the party, at all levels throughout the country, at the block levels, the booth levels, organizes voter registration camps. And I think just last year, even during COVID, just the city of Mumbai, my Yuva Morcha president from Mumbai gave us a report that every single ward saw a rise in 3,000 to 4,000 new voter registrations that the BJYM alone had conducted. So whether it is increasing voter registrations, whether it is allowing or creating platforms for young people 25, 30, 32 to go and contest, empowering them with all kinds of resources that is needed, I think that's a very, very big thing that is happening. My only ask because Sudhanshu is a well-meaning youngster who wants to see more young people participate in India's politics, my only request for you would be this, Sudhanshu. In addition to championing the idea of reducing the age of elections from 25 to 21, which I think, though important, is not going to be extremely not tectonic or path-breaking, what I would suggest you to do, though I know it's not my place to suggest anything at all, what I would suggest you to do rather is to champion the cause of destroying all dynasty-based political parties. That is going to give more opportunities for young people. Launch a tirade against all of the political parties which make politics and political parties a fiefdom of one political family. When the Shiv Sena becomes truly democratic, then more number of young people will start seeing hopes of becoming and joining the Shiv Sena and becoming leaders of Shiv Sena, because they see if they are more capable and talented and hardworking than Aditya Thackeray, then they can rise up and become leaders. If Congress will tomorrow decide that any youngster who is capable, any youngster who is really committed to the party's cause, he is going to be given an opportunity, and the party is not going to push down everybody's neck, Rahul Gandhi and his idea, then I think India's democracy is going to benefit a lot. If you can champion this cause of destroying and dismantling dynasty-based politics in all other political parties with the same gusto with which you are championing the idea of reducing the electoral age, I think we will actually be creating a more vibrant platform for young people coming from modest families, non-political families. They will be having more opportunity and access to make a mark and make a dent in India's political space.
We'll consider the championing, but also...
This can go on for hours, guys. But quick question from the audience. We are running out of time, but anybody, if they have a question.
Good afternoon, panelists. My name is Manas, and my question is from Sudhanshu, sir, that we have been continuously seeing that 52-year-old man in this country called young. So how can we get rid out of this?
No, this is not just a political problem. This is a cultural problem that obviously is showcased in politics. India is an ageist society, right? We think a 45-year-old, a 50-year-old minister with 3 kids as old as me can be considered young because they work out, right? They look slim fit, to young hoga. And this doesn't just equate to politics. It's all around. We have the 3 cons of Bollywood, who we consider still young, etc., who are now nearing the age of 60, right? So I think that instead of just saying, okay, it's in politics, we as a society need to figure out that why are we so ageist, that we just devalue someone's experience only by the number of years they've spent here in the world and how long they've lived, right? But it's about the ability of what they've seen, what they've done, and that necessarily doesn't mean there's a time constraint. So I think we really need to work on us being ageist, and that will exhibit once we get better in politics. We will get more young people. We will get not just one Tejasvi Surya ji, tens of Tejasvi Surya jis, and tens of other young people. For example, Chandrani Murmu, who's the only person right now in parliament below the age of 30. She's actually about to turn 30 next month, but she is the only person who technically can represent 750 million Indians below the age of 30.
Fair enough. I think with that,
Still don't
Hello.
think that it's the Congress party's dynasty politics that is the problem, that a 52-year-old is still considered a young, but it's a cultural problem of the nation. Is that what your assessment
No,
is?
absolutely not. Actually, it's a cultural, it's the existing parties and not just the Congress. Name them all. Whether it's the BJD, whether it's the JDU, whether it's, parts and unfortunately some parts of the BJP as well, because the minister that I was referring to is a current minister, right? It's an existing throughout all parties, but again, sir, that's because it's a cultural issue. Our parties value or exhibit the cultural ageism that we have. And that's what we need
I
to
know,
solve.
Sudhanshu, that is what he has been trying to defend or argue for the last 30 minutes. Regardless, I thank both my speakers. We had a wonderful conversation and
Thank
I
you,
hope that
Arjun.
this tradition continues. Thank you very much.